of your evidence that we must deal with today. I think you will still come back for other parts of evidence on other matters. Okay, I think registrars just administer the oath of affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Mosebenzi Zwane.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed affirmation?
No.
Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing else but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, I truly affirm.
I truly affirm.
Thank you. Is Mr. Zwane legally represented today?
Yes, Chair.
Oh, okay. If his counsel or attorney can place himself on record, just from where you are, will be fine.
As Mr. Hearing Chair, my name is Alpheus Denga, the representative for Mr. Zwane.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Mr. Zwane, we will try and use the time we have optimally, and that might mean me being a little stricter than I was last time on answers. So obviously, important things, feel free to articulate what you need to articulate. But because of time, we must just try and make sure that answers, as far as possible, are straight to the point. But nothing I say now means you mustn't make points that you feel are important to make.
Thanks, Chair. I'm here to try and assist you as much as I can.
Yes,
Thank
yes. No, that's all right. Mr. Pretorius?
Thank you, Chair. For the record, Mr. Zwane, there are two affidavits that we may refer to later this afternoon. The first is a second affidavit filed by yourself.
I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius. Maybe for the benefit of the public, you could start by just saying where we are with his evidence and what it relates to, just so that they can follow.
Yes. The evidence that Mr. Zwane has given on 2 previous days and is to complete, hopefully today, deals with his participation in or knowledge of a series of housing matters that occurred during the years 2010 and 2011 in the Free State Province. We have dealt to a large extent with Mr. Zwane's knowledge of and participation in certain events during the course of the year. The first involved the abandonment of an open tender system and what occurred during the first half of that financial year. And the second involved the devising of a prepayment scheme, an advanced payment system. And it is in relation to the advanced payment system that we will ask questions today, principally.
Yes, okay, no, that's fine.
There are 2 affidavits, Mr. Zwane, that may become relevant later, and certainly is relevant overall in relation to your evidence. The first is the second affidavit filed by yourself. That appears, just for the record, in bundle FS12 at page 623. The second is a second affidavit filed by Mr. Mokwena, and that appears at bundle FS12, 372.1 to 372.47. It's not a long affidavit, but there are a number of annexures to the affidavit. You have been provided with a copy of that affidavit, and you may wish to comment later on, and I'll ask a few questions later on. Mr. Mokoena was the head of department during 2010-2011 Free State Human Settlements. The first task for today, Mr. Zwane, is to put to you certain versions in relation to the origins of the advance payment system during October 2010. We dealt with it briefly, certainly your evidence in regard thereto during the last hearing when you gave evidence here. And you will recall that you said at a meeting with officials in the war room after the Welkom meeting, you raised a question as to what could be done. Mr. Mokwena's version is different. He says that you called him and other officials to a meeting in what colloquially became known as the War Room in October 2010, and you proposed the advance payment system. Do you have any comment?
Yes, Chair. My comment is simple. I did not propose. I asked the question, why can't we help the contractors in terms of materials, as that issue was raised in a Welkom meeting? That is my story. I deny that I proposed.
Right. That evidence, Mr. Mokwena's evidence, is confirmed by Mr. Makatwa and Mr. Tsoametsi, who also attended that meeting. They both say that you proposed the advance payment system.
Well, I've gone through both statements. I agree with you, Chair, that Mr. Makatwa is agreeing with Mr. Mokoena, but the version of Mr. Tsoametsi is the version that I put here, that there were discussions after I had asked the question, and after those discussions, a decision was taken that there should be a broad research in terms of this.
To an extent, that is common cause between yourself and the other witnesses. We'll get there. I just want to put to you what Mr. Tsoametsi said on the 28th of September before the Commission. He says, and his version is that at that meeting you said, I think we have a solution that we must buy material. What is your response to that?
I said, when I was here, I asked the question that why can't we help the contractors with the materials, as that will actually enable us to do what we were supposed to do to deal with the problem that had been raised earlier on by the minister.
Is your issue simply that you asked a question and you didn't propose, even though your question may have suggested that that's what you had in mind should be done?
Chair, I asked the question. That is why there were debates around this matter. My understanding of a proposal is that if you put a proposal on the table, that proposal will be accepted or rejected.
Yes, I understand what you mean. I just want to make
Yes.
sure. It seems to me that your issue might just be that you didn't put it as a proposal.
As a proposal, yes.
But in substance, you may have put a question that conveyed to them that you were thinking that that's the way to go. Would you accept that as a fair interpretation of what may have happened?
I would accept it, Chair, as we were together in the Welkom meeting when that issue was proposed.
Yes.
It's not an issue that I came with from
Yes.
somewhere. It's an issue
Yes.
of a Welkom meeting, and when we called the meeting, we had to try and thresh that issue out and see whether it's workable or not.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, at least I think that clarifies my own mind, because I was thinking, if I say to Mr. Pretorius, why don't we adjourn now? Obviously, he will think, I'm thinking we should adjourn.
Might take that a little more seriously.
I leave it at that. Mr. Pretorius?
So, in summary then, when you distinguish between a question and a proposal, you're saying that you may well have raised an issue for discussion and further debate. But in doing so, you would have conveyed what your thoughts were.
Well, it may have been taken so by other attendees of the meeting, but the fact of the matter, in all the affidavits, they agree with the fact that that matter was debated in that meeting.
Yes. So it doesn't seem that we're too far apart on that issue. What you're stressing, however, that it was not a formal proposal for acceptance or rejection.
That's correct, Chair.
Then there was, its common cause, a discussion about the idea, let's settle on that for the moment, the idea for further discussion. And one of the issues arising was the legality of what was to be considered. Correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Mr. Mokoena, you will have seen in his affidavit, goes further. Mr. Mokoena raised his concerns about the idea, and I use that word advisedly for the moment, and indicated that he did not support it. Do you recall that?
I don't recall him saying he does not support. I recall one of the concerns raised in the meeting was the legality of that process.
Right. He says that the issue between yourself and himself in a discussion between the two of you, I think it was after the meeting, he says that you said to him, if you don't want to implement this plan, you, Mr. Mokoena, should tender your resignation. Do you recall that?
There was no meeting between me and Mr. Mokoena outside the formal meeting, which everybody was there, Chair.
Did that happen in the formal meeting?
No, there was no such a comment from me, because if I remember well, the end discussion of the meeting was actually on the Mr. Mokwena's favor. There was no conclusion that the question which has been interpreted as an idea is what we must actually implement. The resolution was that the DDG, Mr. Zondo Commission, should go and research broadly about all the issues which were raised in the meeting and report to the HOD, which was Mr. Mokoena. And in that process, it is my belief that Mr. Mokoena would have then addressed whatever matter that was a concern to him.
Did Mr. Mokoena at any stage during the meeting, shortly after the meeting, or at any stage thereafter say to you that he objected to the idea or the plan?
No, sir. No, Chair.
He goes further to say quite expressly that you used an expression in Sotho saying that he will walk next to his shoes, meaning he would remain poor. Do you recall that?
No, Chair.
Just to put some context in regard to that last question from Mr. Pretorius, he said you said this, namely that he would walk next to his shoes. He said you said this in the context of saying if he was not prepared to implement the plan, or to go along with the plan, he would need to resign, and obviously he would be without a job. And he would then find himself walking next to his shoes. You understand the context. Mr. Pretorius, my recollection is correct?
Correct.
Yes. You never said anything along those lines.
Chair, I never said anything of that sort. In fact, if we refer back to the investigations, you would actually realize that the issue of advance payment was actually implemented even before this document we're talking about was finalized. In the meeting of the 18th of November, as per the investigations, Mr. Mkwena, in a report to the investigators, actually acceded to the point that when the meeting was discussing that point, advance payment had already been done. It is here on black and white. So we continued to have a good relationship. That is why I could understand even when I had said everybody should be working during December. Mr. Mkwena himself did not avail himself, and I did not have an issue. I understood.
Okay. Mr. Pretorius?
When you refer, Mr. Zwane, to advance payments having already been done, are you referring to a period before October 2010?
In fact, if you look at the investigations, they will indicate that the issue of advance payment in the Department of Human Settlement started in the year 2007, 2008, thereabout. But on this matter of 2010, Mr. Mkwena, as he was asked, he indicated in the report to the investigators that by the 18th of November, when the MINTEC meeting was organized, advance payment had already been done.
By the 18th of November 2010?
Yes.
The period that you referred to earlier, 2007, 2008, that would have been before you came to the Department of Human Settlement.
That is correct, Chair.
Is that what you referred to earlier as the nurture scheme in the RCHA?
The nurture scheme was reported in the meeting in Velco when I raised this matter. I did not know about this matter, Chair, at that point. I must clarify that matter. As I was going through these documents by the investigators, they actually indicated that the problem of advance payment in the Free State started around 2007, 2008, and they further discovered that when it was put to Mr. Mkwena, that why would he not have listened to the MINTEC meeting of the 18th of November 2010. He actually acceded to the point that advance payment had already been done before that meeting.
Well, we'll come to that meeting of the 18th of November,
Okay.
the MINTEC meeting, and the meeting that followed, the MEC meeting. But for the moment, we have done some investigation and research into the period prior to 2011, and we have found no evidence of any prepayment system that mirrors the prepayment system that was implemented in 2010-2011.
I can actually try and help Chair with a page, if I'll be allowed.
Okay.
It's paragraph 7, Chair, point 1.6, departmental presentation dated the 17th of October, 2011, slide number 6 of the presentation, and that is found in FS 20, page 370. If I may read it, in short, it says, Mokoena admitted that as a result of a strategy to expedite housing delivery in December 2010, that the department had exposed itself to risk due to advance payment made to building materials suppliers amounting to 497 million. Although MEC had rejected this strategy on the 18th of November 2010, the HOD admitted in his presentation that the suppliers had already been paid in advance.
Where are you referring to now?
I think he's reading
FS
from his
20,
notes.
page 370.
I think
Are we
he's reading
referring to
from his
black
notes.
numbers or red numbers?
The black numbers.
FS 20, page 370.
Yes.
You say it's at slide 6.
It's paragraph 7.1.6. In his presentation, it's slide 6. But FS 20, page 370, is paragraph 7.1.6.
Yes. Well, I don't think that there's anything here, firstly, that deals with 2007 and 2008. Correct.
That is correct, Chair.
Nor does it deal with anything before October 2010.
According to my understanding, Chair, it deals with the 18th,
Yes, so
as I read it.
let's
18th of November.
read the last paragraph
Yes.
on that page.
Okay, he says it deals with the 18th of November,
Yes.
Mr. Pretorius.
Yes, exactly. So that's what I want to put to Mr. Zwane.
Yes.
Firstly, if you look at paragraph 7.1.6, that is a departmental presentation made on the 17th of October 2011, not 2010. So this was a year later. 17 October 2011, do you see that?
Yes, Chair.
And this presentation dealt with the Free State Department of Human Settlement Expenditure and Delivery for 2011-2012 financial year. You see that?
Well, can we read that paragraph, Chair? So that,
Yes, I'll come there. We're
Okay.
just going through the whole of the
because,
presentation that you've just put before the chair.
because to me it says delivery in December 2010.
No, we'll get there.
Okay,
We'll get there.
okay,
Let's take it step by step.
okay.
So before we get to the slides, the introductory part says the HOD, Mokoena, made a presentation in respect of the Free State Department of Human Settlement Expenditure and Delivery 2011-2012 financial year. So this is dealing with a presentation that took place in the following financial year to the 2010-2011 year. Can I put that document before you so you can follow? I
FS
think
20.
it would be easier.
FS 20.
Yes, FS 20, page 371. Ms. Rangata will help you.
I'm
Do you have
there,
it
Chair.
before you?
Yes.
You will see then at the top of the page, paragraph 7.1.6 of this document deals with a departmental presentation dated 17 October 2011.
Yes, Chair.
I've dealt with the next 2 lines. Slide 3 of the presentation, introduction and background, reflected that December 2010, it's now referring to the previous financial year, as a result of strategy to expedite housing delivery, department exposed to risk due to advance payments made to material suppliers amounting to 481 million rand. That's a matter of record there, correct?
Yes, Chair.
The next insert says that slide 5 of the presentation, current certified progress and expenditure, and that's current for that financial year, reflected that it should be reiterated that the department does not make any payments in advance. And the words "does not make any payments in advance" are underlined. And all funds are dispersed based on certified progress and/or proof of delivery of material to site. That appears to be the position in 2011, correct?
Yes, Chair.
Then slide 6 of the presentation, current certified progress and expenditure, reflected that the table below reflects the total amount committed on all the contracts entered into with contractors and service providers during the previous and current financial years for the delivery of housing units across the various programs. And the table that appears below that comment then deals with expenditure committed for the 2010-2011 financial year and the 2011-2012 financial year. That we can assume. We don't have to go into that table.
Yes, Chair.
And then there's an asterisk beneath the table which reads, "It should be noted that the amount dispersed represents the total disbursement on projects to date and includes the 481 million rand paid in advance to material suppliers during December 2010. That is the comment there.
Yes.
And I think the paragraph which you have referred to that we now have in its context reads as follows: Mokoena therefore admitted that as a result of a strategy to expedite housing delivery in December 2010, the department had exposed itself to risk due to advanced payments made to building material suppliers amounting to 497 million rand. And then the next paragraph is important. Although MinMEC, it's said here Mini-MEC, had rejected the strategy on 18 November 2010, the HOD admitted in his presentation that suppliers had already been paid in advance. So what is clear from that is that there's an admission that suppliers were paid in advance after October 2010, and in fact in December 2010, that this involved risk to the department, and there's no admission as to the lawfulness of such a process. In fact, what this appears to say is that MinMEC rejected the strategy at the meeting of 18 November, and we'll come to that meeting in due course. Is that a fair summary of what's contained here?
That's the picture I was painting, Chair.
All right, so I don't think we differ very much on that.
Yes, but I'm not sure that I understand what point you wanted to make.
The point I'm making, Chair, is that
I just want to make sure I know that if there's a particular point you are trying to make.
the point I'm making, Chair, is that in terms of this information, when it was asked that why was the advance payment made, and that was put to the HOD, Mr. Mokoena. My reading here is that he admitted that when he was told that he should not continue with the advance payment. That advance payment had already been paid. And I want to say to this commission, the issue of the advance payment, if it was raised in a meeting of MINTEC, subsequently MEC, which was the 18th and the 19th of November 2010. If he admits that at that particular time, when that decision was made, the advance payment had already been made, the document that we're talking about here, which was as a result of the question I put in the meeting, the war room meeting, was only signed on the 25th of November, not the 18th or the 19th.
Okay. Mr. Pretorius?
We know that Mr. Mokoena signed that document prepared by Mr. Mosebenzi on the 25th of November 2010. You're perfectly correct. And you raised the issue, why wouldn't he sign it? His evidence was that he signed it because he feared that he might lose his job if he didn't cooperate.
I deny that is the truth and the sole truth, Chair, because if he was so scared of me, he would have listened to me even when I said he should not go on holiday. It's on record that he did go on holiday, and I left him in that department. As an HOD, when I left the department, I'd never dealt with him or did anything that was indicative of the fact that I was a monster in that department.
But you said when he told you that he had already made arrangements, I think, for a holiday, I think from last time, I thought you said you understood. So you had no issue with the fact that he was not going to be around because the arrangements for his holiday had already been made.
If I understood that, Chair, which is true, why would I fail to understand and give him an opportunity on a document that I'd given him and Muso Zwane an opportunity to go and work on?
Mr. Pretorius?
Yes. Well, perhaps we can wrap this up by just confirming that you have no problem with the facts set out in the document we've just referred to at FS 2370. Correct?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to move to a new topic, and that is what you were told, Mr. Zwane, of the legality or otherwise of the advance payment scheme. Mr. Mokoena says, and we've touched on this, that he actually objected to the plan at that war room meeting in October. And he says that your response was that you had been advised that the plan was in fact lawful. Do you recall anything like that happening at the October meeting?
I deny that, Chair.
Mr. Cheney, do you recall who he was? C-H-A-I-N-E-E, or is? Cheney. Member of National Treasury, do you recall that?
Well, maybe due to time lapse and the fact that Mr. Mokoena was the one who would deal with officials at the level of MINTEC.
In fairness, I must just put something to you for your comment, if you know anything about it. Mr. Cheney gave evidence before a disciplinary inquiry which took place in the following years, and as a result of which 5 officials were dismissed for participation in the advance payment scheme. You know that there was a disciplinary inquiry and officials were dismissed, correct?
I read that in the media, and as I followed up, I got to learn that that was a fact, Chair.
In fact, Mr. Cheney said in evidence, and that's part of the bundles that you have before you, that at a Tech MinMEC meeting of the 29th of October 2010, the Free State representatives were informed that the advance payment system for materials was not allowed. And Cheney said that, although it doesn't appear in the minutes, he said this at the inquiry, that he raised the wrongfulness of the advance payment system at that meeting, and also that it was non-compliant. Now, you weren't at that meeting. You've said so already in your evidence. But one would have imagined that had such strong sentiments been expressed by an official of Treasury in regard to an issue that was already on the table, as it were, at war room meetings, or at least one war room meeting, that would have been reported to you. Was that reported to you?
No, it wasn't, Chair.
Did Mr. Matlachwa report to you on the content of Tech MinMEC meetings and MinMEC meetings?
No, Chair. Mr. Matlachwa reported to the HOD.
And did the HOD then report in turn to you?
There is a report I recall, and I think I'd said that in my earlier affidavit, that at some point the HOD approached me to say National had said there were issues that needed to be corrected in the recovery.
I think you said reviewed or revised.
Yeah, yes.
Because
I accepted that whatever needed to be revised or reviewed or corrected.
that was the expenditure recovery plan.
Yes, that's the only thing I remember. And for the purpose of the commission, Mr. Mokoena indicated that we were supposed to report on a weekly basis to National in terms of the progress we are making in terms of this recovery plan. And I was even shown reports that were going to National.
All right. The evidence of Mr. Matlachwa continues. He says that when he heard about what had happened at the Tech MinMEC meeting, and where advice had been given that advance payments as contemplated, it says by the MEC, would be unlawful, he phoned Mr. Mokoena and he asked Mr. Mokoena to discuss it with Mr. Zwane and with yourself. Now, you wouldn't have been party to that call, but I just want to put it to you that in all the circumstances, it is probable that this report would have been made to you.
Chair, the report was not made to me. If the report was made to me, I would have endeavored, as I did earlier on when I got an indication from the office of the minister that we were lagging behind.
There was another meeting on the 18th of November, you've mentioned that, also of Tech MinMEC.
Correct, Chair.
You nod your head. You must say yes, please.
I've said correct,
You don't have
Chair.
to say please, you just have to say yes.
I've said correct, Chair. Yes.
At that meeting, it was mentioned that the Free State Department of Human Settlements were looking to use the advance payment system, in particular the tripartite agreements and the session, in order to make advance payments. And the response from the meeting was a warning not to implement the plan.
I did not get that indication, Chair.
Right. I must say that that evidence goes further than what the minutes show, but the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th November show that there was by the meeting in regard to the expenditure recovery plan. Were you aware of that?
I would say on the hindsight, that could fall within what I've already alluded to, that HOD Mkwena reported that there were issues that needed to be corrected.
Also, FS 12, page 300, you can go there if you like, but I'll read it to you. It's not a long extract. The minutes of that meeting read, the province was advised not to enter into a tripartite agreement with beneficiaries and suppliers, since suppliers would have to supply materials in bulk without the necessary support to ensure quality and proper procurement proceedings. Also, there are lots of risks involved with this arrangement. The minutes of that meeting reflect that there was a concern about proper procurement proceedings as well as the risk involved. Did you ever come to learn of the discussions or of the contents of the minutes of the meeting?
Before this commission, someone to me, no. I only learned when I was in this commission.
Do you recall being at a meeting of the National Council of Provinces in Kwakwa during 2010 with your head of department, Mr. Mokwena? Because it is said that a report was made to Mr. Mokwena at that meeting at which you both attended, saying that both the ERP and the advance payment system were questioned, in fact not accepted, Well, the report was made to Mr. Mokwena and Kwakwa, and the inference, the probable inference that we would seek to draw is that you would have spoken to you about it.
No, Chair.
As far as the officials are concerned, their attendance at meetings, particularly of MINMEC or Tech MINMEC, where the advance payment system, amongst other things, was discussed. The evidence is that there was a continued objection to, firstly, whether the plan should be entered into, secondly, its legality. Now, we know that the legality of the plan was discussed at a war room meeting at which you presided, and was a matter of concern. They must have known it was a matter of concern to you as well, because that's why that document had to be prepared, the document signed on the 25th of November. Surely in those circumstances it's probable that they would have reported to you the concerns about the legality and the opinion that it was illegal, and I've given you the incidents where these discussions took place. I just want to put it to you, it's more probable than not that this would have been reported to you.
In the discussions, Chair, of that war room meeting, the resolution or the end product of the meeting was that the officials must go back and research broadly on all the matters that were raised in the meeting, and come back with a document which I called a legal opinion at that time as a layman.
We've agreed it wasn't.
After the explanation by you, Chair, and explaining the details of what happened behind the scenes, which I would have not known, we agreed that a legal opinion was not sought. But at the time where I had given the HOD the department and the people who knows law to go and research about the concerns that were raised there. And I thought, as an oversight person, I had done my way. When they came back with the document, which is signed by the HOD, I took it for granted that all the issues that were of concerns in the meeting were addressed.
Yes. There remains the issue of accountability. I was going to raise that at the end of the day, but we have done some research into the Public Finance Management Act and into certain instruments introduced by Cabinet in 2013 and 2011 after these events that talks to the power of MECs and ministers to delegate, but also deals with their residual accountability, notwithstanding that delegation and their duties in that regard. It seems to us, and we'll do further research on that, that there was a gap in the question of what accountability MECs have when they delegate tasks to heads of department. And you will know that that is particularly relevant in terms of the Housing Act, which you have now studied and we'll deal with in a moment. So, Chair, that is a matter that may have to be addressed further. It may be a lacuna that requires attention.
Yeah, well, that's fine.
Because it seems that the approach adopted here is that once there's a delegation from an MEC to an HOD, a line can be drawn in relation to accountability. That's your approach, isn't it?
Well, Chair, I want to agree with your statement you have just earlier put. I think because of the challenges in terms of the clear line of delegation, that is why some steps to try and close the gaps that were existing were then taken around 2013. And
2018 and earlier in 2013.
yes, so I do understand that.
But quite apart from the formal steps taken, it would seem a matter of common sense and responsibility that when an MEC delegates a task to an executive official or to an official, that there should be a degree of supervision compelled and an accountability which makes common sense. And it seems to me that that has now been recognized.
That is correct.
Let's go on to deal with the warnings about the legality of the advance payment system that came to the fore in February 2011 from National, that is the National Department of Human Settlements. The evidence is that during February 2011, this was Mr. Mokwena's evidence, the then Minister of Human Settlements, Mr. Sekwale, and the DG of Human Settlements, Mr. Zulu, called the Free State Department of Human Settlements to a meeting to explain why these advance payments had been made. And that meeting was attended by yourself, Mr. Mokwena, Mr. Zondo, and Ms. Debbie Hutton, the new CFO of the department. Do you recall that meeting?
No, Chair.
Who attended?
I don't recall attending a meeting in February of that nature, and I've said in this commission that I was reshuffled from that department the second week of February. So I don't recall that meeting.
So Mr. Mokwena goes on to say, at this meeting, the Minister instructed the department to stop making advance payments, and that you at the meeting then referred to Mr. Tsometsi's document, and you showed that to the Minister, to say that the payments were legal, but the Minister then insisted that the payments be stopped.
Mr. Pretorius, I'm
didn't
saying,
follow your question, your statement.
I think you were basing your question to the second paragraph under paragraph 27 at page 348. Is that right?
Yes, Chair.
Yes. I'm saying that I have a note, a marginal note that I made when I was giving evidence, which says in relation to that paragraph that the witness says a reference to the document in that part of the paragraph is a mistake. Do you recall anything along those lines?
I don't recall that, Chair. And in fact, this proposition is based on the contents of the statement.
Yes, so
Not the evidence. So I stand to be correct.
maybe your team could just check. I certainly have a note. Initially, before the witness said anything, I put a question mark. And then I have a note that says, the witness says a reference to the document is a mistake.
Yes.
So I just mentioned that in case that's what the witness may have said.
Yes. I'll check that because it may have been, and I seem now to recollect it, the distinction may have been whether the document was put before the minister as a document or whether it was referred to in the abstract as having contained issues as to its legality. But before I put anything on the table, Chair, let me check.
Yes, of course, even afterwards, once the position has been established, a question could be put to Mr. Zwane to put a supplementary affidavit and deal with a question on that paragraph if necessary.
Yes.
Yeah.
It may be a matter of detail because, as I recall, the position Mr. Zwane, his version is that he didn't attend such a meeting at all, so I wouldn't recall the context, whether to that extent of detail or not. Am I correct?
You are correct, Chair.
But Mr. McQueen goes further to say he gave an undertaking that advance payments would stop, and he did put a stop to them by the end of February 2011. That's what he says. It goes further, and perhaps I should go further to complete the sequence of events. Mr. McQueen says then that on their return to Bloemfontein and after the meeting with National, you insisted that they continue to pay the contractors. What do you say about that?
Chair, I deny that strongly, and I want to say to this commission, even if by chance I would have said that, I have said to this commission, I left the department the second week of February, meaning I wouldn't have been a stumbling block for any means for the officials to stop that kind of an exercise if it was illegal. I was no longer there. But I don't recall me insisting on anything that nationally actually said it is illegal for us to do.
There is evidence, notwithstanding that background, that the payments continue.
That's correct. I've seen that evidence when I came to this commission.
You yourself confirmed. Let's move on. That was dealt with already at the end of the last year.
Well, of course, if the advance payments were stopped after that meeting with the national minister, that could have or would have interfered with the plan to ensure that by the end of the financial year, a certain amount of progress had been made in the building of houses and the spending of the money on housing, isn't it?
Chair, the information in front of this commission that we all know is that finally money was taken. A resolution on the 12th of January 2011. A letter was written by the DG to the HOD indicating that 7 days had elapsed and so money will be taken. And we all know the response by HOD with anger that he is dismayed. He thought we were progressing well. So there was a decision that money would be taken. Why would the department continue with advance payment if money was taken? Because that would have created a situation for the new financial year. I must say, Chair, that it is correct that for all intents and purposes, we had tried our level best to build houses, and that information is here. I don't want to dwell in it. And to a certain extent, we succeeded. But the control or oversight, administrative oversight, because from where I'm sitting, I should say the issue of advance payment or tripartite arrangement has been done by a number of provinces, but the how that issue is monitored, I think becomes a problem. And we must.
I'm going to stop you.
Okay.
Because my question was simply whether you would accept that if the advance payment was stopped, that would mean the building of houses further would have to stop, because and that the spending of the money allocated for housing would also it would mean that by the end of the financial year, the department might not have used all the money that had been set aside for houses. But I think your answer is you are simply saying, well, there is correspondence that there was a decision to take the money away. But I thought you could say yes, that would be the effect of stopping advance payment, or no, that would be the effect.
That would have been a project which was linked to that money which was taken was going to suffer. You are correct, Chair.
And at the last hearing, we dealt with that. We dealt with letter of January and the response by the department to the press statement. We dealt with that in some length, you will recall, Chair. And it's common cause that the program was called to a halt in January. Correct? Is that correct? We know it continued after January. There was an occasion in January where the program was stopped. Is that correct?
I can't remember, Chair. I remember that there were discussions with national in January that continued, and finally
Well, we'll look at the evidence in that regard, and in our summary for the Chair, we'll deal with that issue. Chair, page 178 of the transcript of 22 September 2020, it is correct that Mr. McQueen corrected his statement. I was referring to the statement and said he did not mention the document. He just spoke about his flag without mentioning the document. So he mentioned neither presented the document nor referred to the contents of the document. Spoke about issues that would have been contained. The disciplinary proceedings that followed officials were dismissed, and not Mr. McQueen, heard the evidence of Mr. Sishi, SISHA from National Treasury, who testified that the Division of Revenue Act, Section 15, which we've dealt with in evidence here, and the Treasury regulations prohibited advance payment for goods where there had not been delivery of those goods for the benefit of government. And that evidence was confirmed in the disciplinary inquiry findings by Advocate van Graan. The proposition I want to put to you is that a fully informed official or MEC ought to have known that the advance payment system was unlawful, as at least being in contravention of the Division of Revenue Act and the Treasury regulations. What do you say?
I've said in my earlier evidence that in terms of PFMA and Treasury Regulation 8.2.3, advance payment when there is a clear contract of what is going to be paid in advance is not illegal. I've said earlier on today that on the hindsight, one must admit that the administration of the whole process had loopholes in terms of mitigation, risk mitigation, controls, internal controls, and things like that. But the scheme itself, in terms of this acts I've mentioned, even at that time, nobody brought it to my attention, even when I've said they must go and research that this could be illegal, that this could be kind of a scheme.
There was a judgment of the full bench of the Free State Division, which went further in commenting on the tripartite agreements and the session agreements that were part of the advance payment system. There the presiding judge who wrote the judgment said the material supply session agreements were, and I quote, used as part of the documentation to create the farce of legitimacy so as to make the payments look regular and in accordance with the law. As indicated above, it was done to circumvent the provisions of DORA, that's the Division of Revenue Act. Are you aware of that finding?
No.
We've been through the session agreements, their implications and their import. I don't want to repeat that now. We've been through it exhaustively, but I just wanted to put that finding before you. The Auditor General found, and I quote, goods and services with a transaction value of over 500,000 rand were not procured by means of a competitive bidding process as per the requirements of and the reference to various instruments of National Treasury. We know that there was no competitive bidding process before the allocations were made involving advance payments. We know that.
I think without really going back, we have dealt with that matter earlier, and I've expressed my understanding.
Well, we know during 2010-2011 and in respect of the expenditure from 2010-2011, there was no competitive bidding process that was completed. Correct.
The open tender was abandoned.
There was no other competitive bidding.
And the databases were taken, yes.
Yeah. The disciplinary inquiry reviewed the evidence of a number of witnesses, as a result of which those 5 officials were dismissed. It was found in those proceedings by Advocate van Graan that the advance payment system, particularly the act of paying on session, was introduced through a decision of the MEC, yourself, the former HOD, Ms. Mokoena, and the former Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Dlamini. Do you have a comment on that?
I would say through a decision of the executive committee, which was researched at that particular time, and finally brought to me when it was signed, and I agreed with that.
Certain adjustments had to be made to the housing subsidy system to accommodate these advance payments. You know about that. And we've discussed the retention clause. Do you recall that?
I remember the retention clause and the guarantees that are supposed to be there.
Those were removed. Did you know about that? Did you give those instructions?
No, Chair, no, I wouldn't give such an instruction. In fact, I did not tamper with their legal means of instruments in running this.